Go live.
Why, hello. Welcome to Absolute Zero. I'm Rachel Appel.
And I'm Bertrand Leroy. And today we are talking about artificial intelligence. So, are we only talking about artificial intelligence or also about, I don't know, artificial consciousness and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's kind of all part of it. I thought you were going to go with the actual intelligence and see if there's anything
Oh,
on Earth
and
that's
yeah,
stupid or
and
not.
artificial stupidity would be an
Actually, it's
interesting
very
one.
genuine stupidity that's around here. So,
Yeah, so what is artificial intelligence? How do we define it?
so AI could be any kind of software that can reason and can kind of not just behave or mimic like humans, because we can get a lot of software to do that or robots to do that in certain aspects, but something that can actually follow things like language, intent, context, to have a conversation, to be able to figure things out, to anticipate things, which is a
Mm,
lot sounding a lot like consciousness,
yeah.
right? So that's kind of what we want to get to, some level of consciousness, possibly. And I don't necessarily saying that you have to have consciousness to have intelligence, but how are we actually from now on going to define consciousness is actually one of the questions.
It's the hard problem, right?
Yes, it is. It's actually called the hard problem in AI.
Um, not just in AI. Um,
Right,
so
actually
to me,
cognitive.
intelligence is actually a lot mm, narrower than that. Isn't intelligence the ability to solve problems?
Yeah, but that's all kind of what I described, right? Reasoning and all that is being able to solve a problem. You need reasoning to solve your problem.
So would you say that a machine that beats humans at chess is not true artificial intelligence?
That I don't. So are we talking about Deep Blue specifically, or just any old chess?
No,
So I
any chess playing robot.
I don't know that I would call a chess playing robot artificial intelligence, because there is a limited number of moves in chess, right? And the strategies, I mean, there might be a lot, but
Yeah, but if you read Borges, you know that there is also a limit to what you can express with words. I mean, there is a
right,
finite amount of things that you can express, even if that number is huge.
right.
So where is the difference?
So well, it's mostly just that it's pre-programmed to do this one thing, chess. So I wouldn't go as far as saying it's reasoning or thinking about things. It's only looking at this one problem domain and solving a problem within it. It's
Okay, so are
very
you
it's
saying
quite
that
specific.
true intelligence is the ability to solve problems that you haven't seen before,
That
to
would be,
adapt to new
yeah,
problems?
I would say that is a key element. And part of that is the anticipation that I talked about, being able to, try to predict, try to anticipate things. Yeah, definitely. So you're outside of just a tiny problem domain, and you're trying to figure out, based off of experience and imagination, what can come next. Now, imagination is kind of a problem.
Okay, so moving on from chess playing computers, the artificial intelligence that recently beat humans at Go, which is a much trickier problem than chess, uh, actually can also. It's not specific to Go. It's an AI or a computer program that can actually learn to play, and it learned to play Go. It didn't. It wasn't actually
Program.
exactly programmed with an
Yeah.
algorithm. And I believe the same program, it's from Google, right?
Yeah.
I think the same program can actually learn to play arcade games, for example.
Okay.
Uh, so it looks like something that is actually very, very close to your definition of
It
intelligence.
it does. And if you look at, there's even more than that. If you kind of drop down to even a simpler level than that, take little swarm bots, for example, tiny little robots that behave like an ant and you put them together, say 1,000 of them, and they would exhibit swarming behavior.
Mm.
Well, we're looking at those and saying, how much intelligence does any one of them need, right? We really want a consciousness level about the same as ants and swarming type of insects. Then you get all the way up to this GoBot or Microsoft's Taybot recently. That little disaster.
Yeah, that one was probably missing social skills.
Social skills, yep. So you get up to these higher level bots. And then so what we're trying to go with there is bringing that level of consciousness closer to something that humans have. And I think part of our problem is that we love to model everything after ourselves, right? From gods to machines.
Yeah, so we like to make ourselves the
center of it all.
The measure of intelligence. And if we're going to judge based on that, maybe we are a little biased and we wouldn't recognize an intelligence that would be working differently, but that would essentially achieving the same goals.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and look at how we apply this to animals. Dolphins and elephants are extremely intelligent animals. They use tools. Elephants can recognize bones of long deceased elephants for decades later, and they know where they're, buried or left. Sometimes they'll kick dirt over it. So they are well aware of what's going on. They just don't have.
And they do adapt to new circumstances.
They do, and they can kind of predict the future a little bit. Kind of the way we do. They can see things coming, and
So here's something interesting. If you look at insects, for example, you can actually make them behave in very predictable way,
yep.
And you can even put them in a loop of behavior, and they won't have the idea of trying something new that would get them out of this loop.
Right. That Ants movie is totally wrong. Right?
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is that it looks like there is a continuum from insects that would be very close to something pre-programmed that doesn't know how to adapt to new circumstances or a very limited set of circumstances, and all the way to the higher level of consciousness that some animals seem to be showing.
Yeah, kind of like species themselves, right? You have that continuum, the spectrum. So the same thing I would say with consciousness and intelligence. There is a spectrum out there between species and then within species as well. So it's spectrums all over the place.
Yeah, so if we get to the point where artificial intelligence is can adapt, can expose the same level of problem solving that we have, or higher than that, at which point do we decide that, yeah, this is it, and we have actually created something that is deserving of the term intelligence, and maybe even how do we know that that thing is conscious? And there are people arguing that philosophers in particular, that you could have something that looks exactly like a human being, that behaves exactly like a human being,
but is a zombie.
By which I mean exactly, that behaves, that has the exact same behavior, but is it the same thing? How do you tell if that thing has consciousness?
Right. Having been called.
Are there tests of consciousness that work beyond just asking, are you self-aware?
Right. So that's the hard problem of consciousness, which maps right out to the hard problem of AI. How can you even really say that yourself or another person, because you can't see into another person, how can you say if they're conscious or not?
Yeah.
We tend to all just agree that we all have intelligence and consciousness, which is kind of self-serving, right?
Yes, but if we do that, why wouldn't we recognize the same thing about a machine that would exhibit the same behavior?
what's the difference between the organic chemistry going on and digital chemistry? It's both electrical signals, is what it comes down to, right? Your brain and nerves versus silicon.
Yeah, so the debate seems to reduce in that case to dualism.
Yeah, yes. So, and most people are dualists, right?
Yeah.
Separate mind and body. There's been some books out. Sam Harris and Steven Pinker have wrote about, why there's not a ghost in the machine, which is not really the topic here, but I think
Well, it kind of is.
Yeah, I guess you're right, a little bit, right? Because then if we're going to start going into, well, can these things have souls, right? If they have an intelligence. But some of the leading philosophers just think, no, there's no ghost in the machine, and we're just, meat. We're meat machines, is what a lot of cognitive.
Yeah. So how can we know? And is it a question we can answer, and is it a question we need to answer? Because so the way I see it is that if you don't have evidence for something, you should not believe it, right? And you should proportion your belief to the amount and quality of the evidence. And in the case of a soul, that would be something that would need to be that would need to have effects. Otherwise, it might as well not exist.
Right.
And no matter what our personal impression of the problem is, what we think we perceive about it, right, that doesn't affect what it is. And so the thing is that it has, if it existed, it would have to interact with the physical world. And that's that interaction that I'm interested in.
Right.
That's what I want to see. That's where I want evidence. And as long as I don't see that, I have no reason to believe that it exists. And as a consequence, if a robot exhibited the exact same behavior that a human being would, I would consider it to be sentient. And as such, I would actually attribute it rights the same way that I attribute rights to human beings.
So how much behavior from humans? Because Boston Dynamics actually does have some robots. If you so if people want to go to their favorite search engine and look for Boston Dynamics robots, there are these terrifying robots that are being put out in the military, and basically they're autonomous helpers for the military, and they have a humanoid form as well as like a horse and a dog form for carrying around cargo. But they basically just automatically and autonomously behave on their own. Now, generally, they have a purpose, which is carrying stuff around, or the humanoid will, you put them in a warehouse and it'll just go and do warehouse type stuff, like picking up boxes and doing things like that.
So from what I've seen, they look
quite a bit. That human.
They look to have the kind of insect-like intelligence that we were talking about before, where they can adapt to a certain number of circumstances,
right,
very well, and but you can probably put them in a loop, for example, and right, they wouldn't detect the loop because it's, see what I mean?
Right.
But is the loop behavior a valid criterion? I also don't think so, because you could easily write code that detects that sort of thing and gets out of it. Does it mean that you've suddenly become intelligent enough to deserve the to be called sentient or something? Right. I don't think so. So
these ones I think are behind still, but you're right. On some level, they can do, like, they could just kind of do these tasks on their own. So there's something going on there.
Yeah, so and we need to decide where we draw the line, where we think that there might be that consciousness might start to light up.
And consider
it's not a,
maybe what,
again, it's the hard problem.
Right. Now what they're doing is probably about the same as what I would say a toddler is able to do, just with more strength, that it's an actual machine, picking up a heavy box. But if you look at toddlers, right, they, if you take an object, depending on how old they are, and you hide it behind a wall, if they're maybe not quite walking yet, out of sight, out of mind, they have no idea what happened, right, to that object. Well, some robots are like that too, but some of them can actually kind of figure it out and try to go find the box. So some of them are kind of at like almost like a toddler level in some areas, depending on what it is that they're doing. So I think there's still a lot of lower level stuff, but you think if you look at the mechanics, you have the robotics, and then you have cloud power now. So you have the engines running in the cloud, and then that's just directing that robotics and the hardware. But
yeah, so maybe we're not that far from.
Yeah, I think we're just like Moore's law is happening right at some level here. Keeps compounding, and if you think about it, there's more and more software that keeps coming out on one track, and then hardware that keeps coming out as well, right? And they keep kind of upping the ante for each other to make these smarter devices. So.
Yeah, so the day an AI or computer is able to have the kind of discussion that we're having right now, I think at that point there will, and that's Turing test, actually, pretty much.
Yeah, that was the next thing we needed to get to, the Turing test.
Yeah, then, well, it would be hard to argue that if you could really talk about anything and have an intelligent discussion about any topic, then it would be hard to argue that there is an actual difference. Right. How would you even tell? That's the whole point of the Turing test.
Right, so that a regular person cannot distinguish the computer from the human. So there had been a machine that passed the Turing test, and they had been putting computer science people on these, which actually kind of tilts it. Computer science people should be able to figure out what computers are, but I say there's a problem with the Turing test, because this is a highly contested test, right? It's not.
Yes, let's talk about that, because there is a really interesting idea with the Turing test, which is to move the problem from saying whether there is consciousness or not, whether there is real intelligence or not, however you define that. It moves, so those are hard questions, and you would need to actually understand exactly what is intelligence and what is consciousness and what causes it and so on, right, in order to answer those questions. So instead of answering those hard questions, it moves the problem into behavior.
Right.
And it actually doesn't answer the question, is this intelligence? Does this have consciousness? The question it answers is, can you tell the difference between the human being and the computer?
So the fundamental problem with that is not that question, or not that it's a machine, but that the fact of human bias is going to get in there. And
yes, and don't we have a method to eliminate bias?
Well, we do, but humans that would be participating in this test aren't necessarily using those methods. They're just sitting there taking a test.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue, the main issue that I see with the Turing test, and apparently you have the same issues with it, which is that the methodology is usually quite horrible and not very rigorous. But the basic idea is actually good, isn't it?
The concept, yeah.
So
if you think about it, half of you go to, I don't know which one specifically, but you go to websites like Amazon or AT&T or something like that, and they have those little chats. A good half of those are not actual people, they're bots.
Yeah, but we can tell.
Not always.
Not always.
Not always.
No, that's the point. But don't you think that if proper scientific methods were applied to Turing test, we could actually come up with something decent?
I think
that would be interesting if you could double blind it somehow and make sure that
is like, who's been working on getting a double blind for this? Because I got to say, I haven't really looked recently on that specific question. So.
Well, the occurrences that I've seen, basically the cases where the media have been relaying some news that this or that program has passed the Turing test. When you actually look at the methodology behind those tests, it's actually completely anti-scientific and horrible methodology that really doesn't make any sense.
Test, which is also not scientific.
Right.
Or an IQ test. That's another one, the IQ test, which a lot of people would say, why don't we apply an IQ test to these machines? Well, first, the IQ test is bunk. Okay? If you're an adult and you're going around saying my IQ is, well, you know what? The IQ test was actually made to measure grade school children's performance against one another. So you're actually taking a child's measurement against adult intelligence, which you shouldn't be doing to begin with.
Yeah, so the basic idea behind the
results.
IQ test is that 100 is the average intelligence. So a result above 100 is supposed to be more intelligent than average.
I don't think are appropriate, and they're culturally contextual and things like that.
Yeah, so it's
some of it's not intelligence; it's more knowledge. There's a difference.
Well, so in the test there are logic questions, there are cultural questions, there are actually some social skill questions in there.
That's another thing too, is like emotional intelligence and things like that are not measured, and we know that there's multiple intelligence, not just your book smarts.
But the main issue that I see with IQ is that it's one metric for a multi-dimensional problem,
right?
And it's reducing the huge complexity of the human mind to one single number.
Yep. And that number is not even a valuable number.
No, it's not even well defined. So So it doesn't have a lot of value, and it shouldn't be used for anything else than entertainment, probably.
Right. So this brings up another thing, is like emotional intelligence, being able to understand and have emotions, because when it comes down to it, even though we use reason, there are underpinning emotions, and people do use them as part of their reasoning. And, you know, when you think you're not is when you're actually not doing logic right. We have to account for those. So machines, can they have emotions? How would we measure that? That's another part of the hard question, because that we kind of all agree that would come with consciousness, right? Having
right, but can you know, how do you tell genuine emotions from non-genuine?
Fake it. Why can't a computer fake it, right?
Yeah, and all we can do is measure behavior. But yeah, maybe that's fine.
Houses can fake it. Why can't a computer fake it, right? Those kind of things. So yeah, having emotion. A computer can scream how upset it is. Mine does every day, right? How upset it is. That doesn't mean anything, right? I could also scream about that and just be making stuff up. So, you know, genuine emotions and that kind of processing, how to measure that, how to know. So far, all we really have is looking at the behaviors that are expressed by whatever the organism is.
Yeah, it's all about behavior. And how are those called? There is a term that philosophers use about something that would exhibit all the behavior of a human being, but wouldn't have that particular internal thing that that others have.
Philosophical zombie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Philosophical zombies. I don't know. My gut feeling, and unfortunately I cannot really substantiate it, my way of looking at this is that as far as we know, it seems to be likely that well, we have no evidence that would require us to be dualists, basically.
Right.
So in the absence of such evidence, we should fall to the null hypothesis here, which is that nothing extraordinary is actually happening. This is what null hypothesis is. Yeah. In the absence of evidence to the contrary, you have a default hypothesis, which is that nothing extraordinary is happening, and that what you're seeing is a consequence of already known things. Yep. Which, in the case of consciousness, would be the statement that consciousness is a result of the brain. Right. It's what the brain does, rather than the brain being some kind of interface to something unknown that we cannot really measure and see.
Right.
So I'm not saying that this is necessarily true, but to me it seems to be the null hypothesis.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, where to go with that one?
Well, there is this thought experiment that's called the something room. What is it called? Did you read about that one?
Is the dinner table one or the other one where you're locked in a room with a Turing machine?
No, it's where so you have this room. You just pass in some pieces of paper, and there is an operator in that room.
That's
or
part
the
of
Chinese.
Turing test.
Is it the Chinese room or something like that?
Yes.
Yes. So you pass in messages that are written in Chinese. So there are questions in Chinese, and there is an operator in there who doesn't speak Chinese, but he has a collection of drawers where he can look up the question that was passed in and give the answer to the question, again in Chinese. So there is a mechanism here that has it has the exact behavior of, it's a way to restate that question that we were asking earlier. Is there a difference between the behavior that this experiment is showing? Is there a difference between behavior and what is really real intelligence? Can we tell between the two? And the argument here is that in that case, we can tell, because there is an intelligent person behind that is operating the machine, but that person has no, this person's intelligence has no role in the behavior.
Right.
Enough,
this person is acting a lot like those Boston Dynamics robots.
Yeah, in a way, but so the idea here is to make it obvious that, yeah, there has to be something more than that. There has to be a spark of consciousness or something to create true intelligence. And I don't know, if you really had a machine or a mechanism, a process, let's call it a process, because it's not even a machine. It's a process that this person is following. If you have a process that does exhibit all that behavior, how do we know that there isn't, because it has to be a process of a certain complexity. How do we know that there isn't actually a consciousness that emerges from the process?
Right. Well, we don't know. And the only closest thing that we come to doing with that is labeling these little things called qualia. Right?
Yes.
So we have these little, I don't know what you call them, consciousness sparks. They're called qualia. And it's like the stuff that's going on in your head, like that subjective experience that you and you alone have. Does that computer have it too? Computer can tell you it does. Just like I can say I do. But does that actually mean that I have it?
Yeah, you can also lie about having them.
I could lie about it. I could be a zombie. It's kind of believable.
Yeah.
So how do you prove those kind of things when you're the only person in the world, so far as we know, to be able to measure this? And basically self-reporting is not a great way to measure things. But you're the only one that's locked in there. Now, of course, theories have been thrown, not even actual theories, but some hypotheses have been thrown out about collective consciousness and things like that. But just not even going to go into that. Kind of outside of the realm.
Well, you were talking about swarms of robots earlier, and
I meant humans, though, or animals.
Yeah, but what about ant colonies, for example? Could you say that? So, is there some behavior that only emerges from the colony that doesn't exist at the individual level?
More on the human level. I don't know that we have any collective stuff. We might. You never know.
So does that mean that there could be some, if you imagine maybe something a little more complex than an ant colony, could there be cases where you have a set of simple organisms or robots or whatever that individually don't show any signs of higher level intelligence because they're purely mechanical, and as a colony, as a set, they do have emergent behavior that would be considered intelligent?
Are you talking about our employer?
No, I'm actually talking about the brain. In fact, I was,
Because it sounds a lot like where we were.
but yeah, good catch. But I was actually describing the brain, where you have neurons that individually are mechanical, and still the set of neurons that we call the brain is exhibiting some emerging qualities that don't exist at the individual level.
Right. And well, you think about it, it's almost like your brain is like a little colony of ants, right? With the
Yeah.
way it works that
Yeah,
way.
that's what I was getting at. So you could also imagine that a swarm of robots eventually could also start exhibiting some qualities of a high level intelligence,
Right.
just by applying some individual behavior that remains simple and
Yeah, so this is all just a whole branch of science with questions and questions. All of them are unanswered, basically, because we keep bringing out new technology too, by the way. So we're talking
hold
about
on.
all this, asking all these questions, but it's just questions.
Okay, so are those questions scientific questions, actually?
Well, you think about it, what's not a scientific question? It's how you actually try to solve that question is where the science comes in. Right, asking questions, I guess, is always scientific, right? And then you weed out whether it's a good question and you use rigor to do so.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's not about the question, it's about how you get to an answer.
So we're hitting up all the questions, and of course, like it's coming out multifaceted, right? So we're looking at the hardware of it, we're looking at it from a human and animal comparative level, we're looking at it on a software level, and of course, with new technology coming out, you have new, like Google just brought stuff out, Microsoft brought stuff out this year. So you have, more and more software coming out, more robots coming out. So they just keep getting better and better. So are we going to hit some point in time where we get to say that singularity where we could say like, hey, they're conscious enough? And so what I'm wondering is if they will get smart enough, not really conscious or that smart, but maybe smart enough to actually solve this problem for us somehow. That would be kind of
yeah.
cool.
So the
Because
so isn't the singularity the point where the
technology has become smart as us and tipped over to smarter?
yeah, so when the machines that we create are actually able to improve themselves faster than we can.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is awesome and scary, right? Because you like that machines could get up and do for themselves, and then they can do for us. But then they might do for themselves. We've seen what happens in Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, awesome
Or
series, by
Stephen
the
King's
way.
Maximum Overdrive. It's an old one, but it's really good.
Yeah, well, I don't want to give any spoilers about Battlestar Galactica, but there is a twist to this.
Right.
If you've seen the end.
Yes, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Real nerds have seen this, though.
Yeah, and actually, that may be the best fictional reflection on those exact problems.
Exactly.
Can machines become conscious and intelligent?
Yeah.
Yeah, like us. Yes. So
here's
very recommended viewing.
kind of
here.
another auxiliary issue with this, and I give that talk about I give a talk about this AI and robots, and so I talk all about these problems that we have and where the state of robotics and AI is, and then I also go through all the medical, not all of them obviously because there's so many, but some of the medical advancements that have come out in the. So I've tried to update this every year. So you look at on one track, we're creating these machines and software. We're trying to make them like us or smarter than us. And we're trying to, we're modeling them after us. We want to make them smart. But at the same time, we want to live basically forever, right? So as humans, we keep bringing out medical stuff to enhance our lives and longer lives and healthier lives. So some of that is a bionic eye, plastic blood. We can put chips on brain cells and brain cells on chips, right? So we have nanotechnologies, bionics, prosthetics, and this is all IoT'd now, so it's all Internet of Things and connected. So people are getting replacement limbs and they're connected to the internet. It's like 2016 is fantastic sci-fi that we're living in, and it's just getting better. So if you take a look at these two tracks of improving humans and making robots like us, I think what's going to happen is one day we may actually converge.
And that is called transhumanism.
And we're going to make ourselves robots.
Mm-hmm.
Then we might have an answer.
Well, you could argue that that little thing here is a prosthetic of sorts for your brain.
Yeah, it kind of is, right? You think about it.
For me, it totally is. I have atrocious memory. I can't remember shit. And that thing is reminding me of all the stuff that I forget. And
so many people's birthdays, I wouldn't know it.
Well, yeah. But I would today. I would have to, and I guess everybody who has one of those things would. It would take a while for us to readapt to not having them.
Yep. So that's a prosthetic then. It definitely is.
Yeah.
People forget. I also
so what happens when you have that implanted in your brain, and maybe you have a memory module in there that actually integrates with your brain so well that you don't even think about it.
Right.
And,
I mean, just think about being a person who wears glasses. Like your glasses come off, and then you're like, you're not even functional because I can't find my glasses. I guess some people are okay, but I can't see without them.
Yeah, and you can think of
like a brain prosthetic would be even worse, right?
Yeah, and actually a lot of technology is like extensions of our bodies.
That's...
When we drive, for example, we don't even think about what we're doing. We're just moving with the car, and it acts as an extension of our bodies in a lot of ways.
So self-driving cars are a form of AI.
Well, yeah, that will also happen at some
problem
point.
Domain, right?
Yeah. And yeah, that's also interesting. What, in practical terms, what are the AI problems that are worth solving? And
right.
there are different opinions on
made
that.
For everybody, is that it? Just to clean your house and stuff? I mean, I think we could do a little bit better than that, or just sending them off to kill everybody else. Like, can we do something a little better, something to help humanity? We could clean for ourselves. We could stop killing. So where's that cool thing that we're going to do with robots that'll help people rather than destroy things?
Yeah, but we don't necessarily know in advance what will yield benefits and what won't.
Right, like the food making robots we need, or ones to figure out water shortages or something. So I would like to see more of that personally. So robots that are solving world problems.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're...
And driving definitely is one, because we suck at driving and we kill people in massive numbers, and AI can actually help save lives here.
Yes, a lot of people are very scared about the self-driving car. Ooh, it's the bias of being human. It's the above average bias. Everybody thinks they're above average. Well, some of you gotta be below average and some of you gotta be just average. Not everybody can be living in Lake Wobegon, right? It's just not how it works. You're a shitty driver. I'm sorry. We all are.
Yes.
At least I will admit it, right? But nobody else wants to. But you put that phone in your hand and you start texting, and you're even shittier of a driver, right? But
yeah, you've been in my car. You know I'm a shitty driver.
So the machines could do it better than you can, right? They will not be distracted by a squirrel.
Yeah.
It will not be texting. It will never drunk drive. It will always know the perimeter and where other vehicles are, where you literally have blind spots in your vision and blind spots around the car. So there's so many of these problems that could be solved, and all we need is for it to be as good as us. But it's already better than us.
Yeah, and I'm totally ready for self-driving cars. I really want that to happen.
Me too. Plus the whole trying to read and driving. Talk about texting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I want to be able to do stuff while I'm driving to work.
Well,
That would be awesome. More time. Yeah.
Get in there, let it take you somewhere while you do other things.
Yeah. I like to drive, but not that much.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's AI. So if people want to look up, there's a philosopher called David Chalmers who has written and talked extensively about this. He's from Australia, and I believe he's at University of New York now, or one of the New York universities. And he wrote a paper on the cognitive computational model. So basically, kind of rethinking what consciousness is and talking about qualia and all that stuff, and saying, well, so we think about dualism and we think about meat and software or ghost in there. And then we kind of think, well, a machine should have those things too. Well, maybe none of this is right. Maybe there's something else that is actually consciousness, and our unique inside perspective is skewed and biased, which we already know it is. It's just finding out what that skew and bias is for your self-reporting.
Let's put a link to that in the description.
Right, far more technical detail than I can cough up in here. Very hefty reading, but.
And really while we are recommending Goodreads, my own favorite about consciousness is what Douglas Hofstadter has written. So there are two books that I will recommend. The first one is I Am a Strange Loop, which is his most recent book on the topic. And in the book, he actually explains that this is a second attempt at tackling the consciousness problem. His first attempt was Gödel Escher Bar, An Eternal Golden Braid, which is a much bigger book, but that other book talks about a whole lot of other super fascinating things. And if you haven't read that, it's an absolutely marvelous book. I read it about 25 years ago, and I still remember that I was fascinated throughout the whole thing. It's a big book, it's a serious book, but it's really worth it.
Right. I would add to those two, it's not specifically AI, but Steven Pinker's The Blank Slate, The Modern Denial of Human Nature, is a very good book. It really talks about the problem of the ghost in the machine. Are you just electrified meat, or is there something in there, working the machine? So what's going on there? So he really
Pinker is a very, very good read in general. But his books tend to be very, very long as well.
Very, very long, lots of big words, yes. But
yeah, so if you want a short read, I Am a Strange Loop by Douglas Hofstadter is a good one. What else? Oh, yeah, another book that I read a long time ago and that I disagreed with what he was saying, basically, is Penrose's, what was the book exactly? So, The Emperor's New Mind. So Penrose has this idea that he can mathematically prove that there is Turing machines specifically will never reach true intelligence.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
specifically Turing machines or machine?
Yes.
Okay.
Turing machines.
Well, okay, but I think we're going to bust out of the definition of Turing like any day now with some of the advancements coming out there.
Yeah, so I think, I don't want to get too deep into that because those are actually objections that have been formulated against Penrose's thesis, and he has answered those, and it's a really complicated topic.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's above my understanding. So, but the impression that I had was that the argument kind of fell in that assumption that we would necessarily have to use a Turing machine, and also in the assumption that we as humans could actually adapt to any new problem. That's part of his reasoning. And I think that is highly
egotistical,
contentious.
Yes, because I don't know that we can.
So I would agree that we are able to adapt to any new problem below a certain complexity.
Right.
and that
I'm
puts
worried that we're creating some problems for ourselves that we might, bite off more than we can chew.
yeah, that too. But so his reasoning, it's actually a mathematical proof that is a variation on Gödel's incompletude theorem. So it's very interesting, but there are some assumptions, I think, in there that are unwarranted.
Right.
And he's giving too much credit to our human brains.
Oh, that bias showing up again.
And then he goes on to actually try to make it plausible, to find a plausible mechanism to explain why our brains are capable of doing something that Turing machines couldn't do.
Okay.
And that just goes completely off rails because he has no evidence whatsoever that there is something there. So I found that a little troubling from Penrose, who is one of the most brilliant mathematicians and physicists alive today. So
right. Well, it just goes to show it doesn't matter. Humans, no matter who you are, 100% of us have biases, and it's up to others to point it out when you show that bias.
Yeah, but again, Penrose is definitely someone who is way more smart than I am.
Right, he should be a little less biased than the rest of us.
Yeah, so I wouldn't assume that I'm right on this one.
There's that. I'm not really going to outmath the guy. Right?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, I have a lot of admiration for the guy. He invented so much awesome stuff. Do you know Penrose tiles, for example? It's beautiful and awesome mathematically. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, let's see. We talked about the Turing test. I don't think so. I think we covered the big stuff. It's all just kind of nitpicking about it. And then hanging around and waiting to see what kind of advancements happen. So.
Yeah. We live in fascinating times for that sort of stuff, definitely.
Certainly do. When AI starts augmenting us, with medical devices, that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and throughout my career, I've always heard that true AI was about 20 years away.
Yes.
And it's always 20 years, but actually right now we have some pretty convincing stuff. I mean, we're kind of pivoting over, just bots and very limited computer algorithms to deep learning and stuff that really can adapt to new problems. So it's going to be really interesting.
And the data center power for this that we really didn't in previous years. Now that we're doing cloud and all that good stuff, we got somewhere to put all this machine power.
Yeah. Yeah, and what would an artificial intelligence look like if it were spread across the world on distributed across data centers?
It would be HAL.
I mean, I don't want to advocate for Skynet, but
it would be like what is it, HAL from 9000 from the movie? What the heck was that movie?
Oh, HAL?
2001: A Space Odyssey. That took me.
Oh, HAL 9000.
HAL 9000. It took me a minute to think of the name. Yes, that's what it would be, right?
Yeah.
It would be HAL or Skynet, but.
Yeah. So it would be interesting if that happened, to understand where the differences would be with the human mind. Anyway, what shall we talk about next week?
Stuff and things.
Stuff and things.
Stuff and things. Things and stuff.
Yep. We have a long list of topics that we can look
at. Maybe we could do near-death experiences. We'll do the morbid stuff, or we can save that for Halloween, one of the two.
No, let's do that.
Oh, we could do ghosts on Halloween.
Near-death experiences. I like that.
then you get to talk about neuroscience.
It's a good skeptical topic. So,
what goes on in your brain when you're looking like you're dying?
Yeah. Cool. Let's do that.
All right.
Well, see you next time.
Next week, Rachel, Bertrand, we're out of here.
Bye.